This is Goldie Jacoby, an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor, writer, and storyteller. Goldie is back in New York City for the first time since 1954. Goldie lived in the Bronx from 1948 to 1954, and then moved to California in 1954. But before Goldie's time in America, she lived as a child in Poland in the year 1937 to 1945.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II. Poland's 34 million inhabitants, crushed, scattered, and enslaved.
On August 25, 1939, at 4:43 a.m., a Soviet ship opened fire, marking the beginning of World War II. The Soviets attacked with over 450,000 troops, 4,736 tanks, and 3,300 aircrafts. Goldie, 5 years old at the time, went into hiding with her family. Due to Nazi takeover of Poland, Jews were being hunted for extermination. They needed to flee, and a righteous Gentile brought their family into his barn, where they hid with fear, starvation, and filth for 3 years. After that, Goldie's family was sent to a displaced persons camp in Austria, where they started to lose hope.
Well, we were in Austria for 3 years in a displaced persons camp, and it's called a DP camp. And we had nowhere to go. There was homeless, countryless, but we were all really ready to go to Israel. But we couldn't get in there too, for the same reasons that are happening now. And so eventually we had good news from a cousin in New York that was my father's relatives, and they sponsored us. They found that the American Red Cross was very good at getting names down to America, the survivors. And when he heard my father's name, he sponsored us to come to the United States. And that's how we came through Boston with a ship, and then to New York.
After being sponsored to come to the United States, Goldie found herself in the Big Apple, New York City. While this was a new life for Goldie, she persevered, despite some hardships of not knowing English and financial doubts. But at the age of 15, Goldie found someone very special. George Jacoby was also a Holocaust survivor. George grew up on a prosperous farm in Romania, but like other Jewish people in Europe, had to leave that life due to Nazis' ideas of the final solution. George lost all of his family. George survived 6 different concentration camps, including Auschwitz and being on Schindler's List. Before coming to America, George lived in France and then immigrated to the USA, living in New York City, where fate would have it, met Goldie on Southern Boulevard in the Bronx.
And as he approached, I nudged this friend of my brother's to please introduce me, and he did. And he said hello, and he started walking away, and I got really upset. And I'm shy. You wouldn't know how shy I was. I was falling over my own feet, but yet I couldn't let him get away. So I said, "Why are you so rude?" Because he just walked away. And he said, "Little girls shouldn't be standing here talking to these guys." He was a very moral human being and gorgeous, and he didn't want to have anything to do with me. He thought I was young. So I said, I lost my shyness. I said, "If I'm so young, take me home." So he took my hand, took the papers, and walked me home. As we were walking, I sensed a very bad accent. So he said, "He's a Holocaust survivor." I said, "I am too."
Goldie and George's first date was at the famous Tavern on the Green in Central Park.
My first date with George Jacoby was Tavern on the Green. And I found the picture, Tavern on the Green. And it was very expensive those days. He tried to impress me. So we took a picture, and there we were, the two of us. We ordered a drink because he did not, thought I was 18. I didn't know what to order because I had no idea about drinks, what they are. I didn't know a name of anything, you know. And so I was smart enough to say, you order for me. And he did. He ordered a Manhattan. Now, he thought I was such a nice girl. She doesn't even impose her drinking thing on me. So anyway, he was very impressed with me. I had the Manhattan. To this day, now I'm here in Central Park. And we are on our way to the Tavern on the Green, and I will have a Manhattan.
And she did just that. Goldie had an amazing meal, and of course, a Manhattan to remind her of her first date with George. After dinner at Tavern on the Green, their first date culminated with a romantic boat ride together in Central Park. Less than a year later, Goldie and George got married in 1953. They lived together in the Bronx until they moved in 1954 to California. But the end of Goldie's years in New York was a tragic and horrific event that would alter Goldie's life forever.
I went shopping for groceries, and a horrible thing happened. And usually, not always do I talk about it, because when sometimes I see the students of a certain age and I don't feel comfortable talking about it. But being I'm doing this, I will. And so coming home with the groceries, I was brutally attacked by two men. In broad daylight, a hand went over my mouth, pushed me into the apartment, and I was brutally raped. And they looked at the picture on the dresser with my husband and me, and they said, if you say anything, we will kill him. Of course, once they hit me a few times, even though I said I was pregnant, I was then pregnant with my first child. She was I think I was in the third month about. Very, very important, the third month, you know. And it was so traumatic. I think I passed out, because when I woke up, the first thing I did is call him. He said he doesn't remember how he got from downtown New York to the Bronx, how he got there, because he didn't see anything. He just got there. He doesn't know how. He doesn't remember, because his rage was so and so. Anyway, he came, and the two of us, of course, were crying, and then called the detective. And those days, the detective said, if we ever catch them, they will never see the police station. That's how they felt about that. They will not live long enough to get the police station. That's how angry they were, you know, because I really, you know, after all that, I had to go through that. I'm sorry. I usually don't cry, but it's bothering me now. Anyway, so after that, I was really in trouble, because I didn't want to go outside. I became agoraphobic, so the doctor suggested that it took me out of the state, because every man I saw, I thought that was them.
After the doctor's recommendation, Goldie and George packed their bags and moved all the way across the country to California. They started life in Los Angeles, California. Years later, in the early 1970s, George and Goldie moved to Palm Springs, where Goldie still resides. Although this seemed like the end of tragic events for Goldie and George, it was not.
We visited a doctor here because we knew we needed a doctor, and he advertised himself as a health, and we are into vegetarianism and health and all that stuff. So we went to see this doctor. Little did we know that he is really a revisionist and hateful anti-Semite, you know. he told us when he wanted a blood test, and I cringed because I'm terrified. That's another story. The needles that I got in the DP camp, so I was scared. So he says, "Why are you so scared? You had a baby and everything." I said, "Because," and I told him. I didn't want to tell him I was a Holocaust survivor, but I did. And then he said, he turned like white, and then he went into the office and tells his nurse, "Get those shit Holocaust survivors out of my office." And we really didn't know what to do. We walked out, both of us, sitting in the car, just crying. We didn't know what to do. What should we go hit him or what? We went home, and that's when I got the courage to. I have to speak. I just couldn't take it anymore.
Goldie, after this act of anti-Semitism, decided she wanted to speak about her life during the Holocaust, which many survivors do not. Every year, Goldie speaks to thousands of students and adults alike, specifically at middle and high schools and colleges like USC, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and other events. Goldie is a shining example of courage, love, and kindness that is so needed today, tomorrow, and always.
My passion with students, when I speak to them about my horrible life hiding in a barn under pigs for almost 3 years without any education, just looking at the walls for that long, hungry, thirsty with lice. And that's another story because I wrote 2 books about it, But here I am, but I say don't give up. And you still have to be kind. And how are we going to change the world? And that's what I'm trying to do by telling my story so that people understand that only love will change it, not hate.
Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you would like to learn more and read Goldie and George's story in more detail and see where you can get her books, please scan the QR code on the left.